Hello everyone and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. The return of Nick Marone to Brooke's life. Brooke receives a significant surprise at the ideal moment. Can destiny wait? Brooke Logan arrives to work prepared to plead with Ridge Forrester to return home after spending a whole evening once more convincing Hope Logan that Ridge is her destiny. Every time she attempts this, she is humiliated, but she persists. She doesn't care that he's seeing Taylor Hayes once more. That must only be short-term, therefore it will undoubtedly end when Ridge realizes his mistake and reclaims Brooke. If that ever occurs, Brooke may be able to find a diversion in the meanwhile. When Nick Marone arrives at Forrester Creations, Brooke is taken aback. She is excited to find out why he is returning to Los Angeles and is happy to meet him after all these years. Perhaps he is just what Brooke needs at this moment. With Nick in town, who needs destiny? Hayes and Luna meet. In order for Steffi Forrester Finnegan to consent to a relationship with John Finn Finnegan, Luna Nozawa wants to demonstrate to her what it's like to be separated from your child. She must so get to know her younger half-brother. When Steffi and Finn are not there, Luna introduces herself to Hayes since she has huge plans for him. Steffi is unaware of the risk her son faces because of her husband's utterly insane and deluded daughter. Luna possesses a firearm, is proficient with it, and is not hesitant to use it. She may have a two-pronged strategy to get rid of Steffi and kidnap her brother. Since Sheila Carter is aware of Luna's insane behavior and feels bad about producing a monster, would she be the one to save her? Or perhaps Dollar Bill Spencer will be the one who foolishly allowed this insane female to go free. Remy Price is another candidate. Brooke Logan stood at her office window, the morning sunlight filtering through sheer drapes and casting soft shadows on the hardwood floor, her thoughts tangled with hope and resignation. Another day, another lecture to her daughter about destiny and Ridge Forrester, her eternal flame, her karmic soulmate, her repeated downfall. The pattern was painfully predictable now, even to her. She would pour her heart out to Ridge, relive their storied past, beg for another chance, and he would always, inevitably, drift back to Taylor Hayes like a moth to a less volatile flame. And yet, Brooke persisted, each humiliation stacking atop the last like a fragile house of cards she refused to knock down. But today felt different. Not because Ridge had changed. He hadn't. He was still with Taylor, still pretending that his peace lay with the woman who had always been second best in Brooke's mind. No, today was different because of what, and who, awaited Brooke when she stepped out of that elevator onto the Forrester Creations floor. There he was, just standing there like time had rewound, Nick Marone, rugged as ever, arms crossed over his broad chest, a half-smile curling beneath a day's worth of stubble. The ex-sailor, the rebel, the man who once disrupted everything Brooke thought she wanted, and maybe, just maybe, the man who was about to do it again. Her heart stuttered, then steadied into a faster rhythm. Nick. After all these years. She hadn't even known he was in Los Angeles, much less about to stroll into her life like a human grenade, ready to blow up her emotional status quo. Nick? Her voice caught as she stepped forward. He turned, giving her that signature smirk that made him look both dangerous and charming all at once. Logan, he drawled, and just like that, she was back in the whirlwind. Her mind spun with memories, nights on his yacht, kisses stolen on the Forrester jet, a baby they once thought they'd raise together, the stormy love that burned hot and burned out. But was it ever truly extinguished? Brooke wasn't sure anymore. As they hugged, something clicked in her chest, something dormant but unmistakably alive. Nick's presence was not just a surprise, it was a thunderclap at a moment when her heart had been clouded by Ridge's silence and rejection. She wasn't expecting this, and that made it all the more intoxicating. They moved into her office, talking for hours. Nick had been in Europe, working in ship design, overseeing a luxury yacht line. He had done well for himself, no surprise there, and he was back in LA for a long while, as he vaguely put it. The moment she asked why, he shrugged and said, just wanted to see what the ocean brought in. Brooke laughed, genuinely, for the first time in months. He was cryptic, flirtatious, and yet somehow grounding. As they caught up, the gravity of Ridge began to lift off her shoulders like fog burning off under a California sun. Nick looked at her like she was a woman, not a muse, not a past mistake, not a complicated puzzle to solve. Maybe this was what she had been missing. Maybe destiny didn't have to come wrapped in pain and confusion. Maybe destiny was just another word for habit, and maybe habits could be broken. Meanwhile, not far away at the Cliff House, a different kind of storm was brewing. Luna Nozawa sat in her car, staring at the photo of young Hayes Finnegan on her phone. She traced his smiling face with a gloved finger and whispered, "Soon, little brother." Luna was unraveling. Her need to connect with Finn had metastasized into something far more dangerous, a belief that Hayes was her key to belonging, and Steffi was the obstacle keeping her from it. She didn't see Steffi as Finn's wife anymore, she saw her as a threat to the family she was supposed to have. And threats, Luna had learned, could be eliminated. She had practiced shooting for weeks. She knew how to hold a weapon, how to silence it, how to clean it afterward. This wasn't fantasy anymore. It was a plan. Step 1, get close to Hayes. Step 2, make Finn see who really loved him. Step 3, well, the end would justify the means. Luna waited until she saw Amelia take Hayes to the park. No security, no Steffi, no Finn. Just the nanny and the boy. Perfect. She approached slowly, like any young woman trying to compliment a toddler. She introduced herself casually, charmingly. Amelia, though wary, didn't suspect a thing. Luna picked up Hayes, held him close, felt the small heartbeat that represented everything she wanted. It would be so easy, she thought. So easy to just walk away with him. But not yet. She needed to plant the seed first. And so she made sure Amelia remembered her, made sure Hayes remembered her too. She would be back. Next time, there wouldn't be a handoff. There would be a disappearance. And if Steffi got in the way, well, Luna had bullets for that eventuality. Unbeknownst to her, she wasn't as invisible as she believed. Sheila Carter, forever lurking in the shadows of her mistakes, had been following Luna since that eerie confrontation weeks earlier. Sheila saw the signs, recognized the madness, the same madness she had once fought to control in herself. She watched Luna with a mixture of dread and guilt. Had she created this? Was Luna her legacy? If so, Sheila knew she had one last act of redemption to perform, stop Luna before she did something irreversible. She began quietly gathering information, tracking Luna's movements, waiting for the right moment to intervene, not with violence, but with a plan. Back at Forrester, Brooke found herself smiling more. Nick had invited her to dinner, nothing fancy, just the pier, like old times. They walked barefoot on the beach, talking about the lives they'd lived, the lovers they'd lost, and the people they'd become. Brooke found herself opening up in ways Ridge never let her. Nick didn't demand perfection or penance. He just listened. And as the night deepened, so did their connection. One kiss turned into two, and before she knew it, she was waking up in his arms the next morning, feeling less like a woman who'd failed at love and more like one finally learning how to breathe again. But even as she smiled into her morning coffee, Ridge loomed like a shadow in the back of her mind. Ridge noticed the shift too. When he returned to Forrester and saw Brooke laughing, really laughing, with Nick, something in him tightened. Taylor watched from the sidelines, knowing that Ridge's heart never really stayed still for long. She wanted to believe he was committed, but when Ridge looked at Brooke, there was still a flicker of possession. Not love, perhaps, but something close to it. Meanwhile, Dollar Bill Spencer also had eyes on the situation. He had heard whispers of Luna's descent into obsession and now felt the sting of his role in enabling her freedom. He reached out to Remy Price, hoping to keep tabs on Luna and prepare for what might be coming. Back in her apartment, Luna stared at a map of the Forrester estate and plotted her route. She had studied the security systems, the routines, the times Steffi left and returned. She knew the layout, knew where the back entrances were. Her fingers hovered over the cold metal of the gun in her drawer. She whispered Hayes' name again like a prayer, or a promise. But just as she reached for the weapon, a knock sounded at her door. When she opened it, she was met with the last person she expected, Sheila. "We need to talk," Sheila said. Luna tried to slam the door, but Sheila wedged her foot in. "You don't want to do this," Sheila warned. "You're going to destroy everything." But Luna wasn't listening. Not anymore. Not to Sheila. Not to anyone. Back at Forrester, Brooke received a bouquet of deep blue orchids with a note, for the one who always kept the sea inside her. Nick. She smiled, genuinely, and for the first time in months, didn't think of Ridge. Not right away. Maybe destiny could wait. Or maybe it was never destiny at all, just persistence dressed up in poetry. What she had now felt real. Felt new. She wasn't sure where things with Nick were headed, but for once, she was okay not knowing. She didn't need a storybook ending. She just needed a story that wasn't on repeat. As the week unfolded, Brooke and Nick's reunion became the talk of the town. Ridge grew colder, Taylor more insecure, and Katie Logan, watching from the sidelines, wondered if Brooke was finally breaking free of her toxic loop. Meanwhile, Luna was moving. Fast. And the clock was ticking. Hayes was in danger, and only a few people had pieces of the puzzle. Sheila. Bill. Remy. Would they connect the dots in time? Would Steffi realize the storm heading for her family before it was too late? Ridge's jealousy, Luna's audacious move, and Nick's rosy return. Ridge Forrester, however, is envious of Brooke Logan's romantic reunion. Let's discuss the upcoming events in the CBS soap opera as you continue reading. Nick Marone is back. Fans will witness Brooke receive an unexpected blast from the past in the upcoming episode. Nick arrives with what looks to be a crimson rose in his hand. Brooke's mouth drops as she sees her ex-boyfriend. The blonde's eyes widen as she realizes that Nick is standing in front of her. "Some things never change," Nick replies with a smile and a laugh. Nick is probably going to rave about Brooke's beauty. The romantic reunion of Brooke Logan. For months, fans have been listening to Brooke complain about missing Ridge. The blonde has made every effort to win back her ex-husband. Ridge is obviously still deeply in love with Brooke. He is committed to upholding the promise he made to Taylor Hayes, though. Ridge tells Taylor about Nick re-entering Brooke's life in a sneak peek. "To us, that sounds like jealousy." Luna Nozawa's audacious step. According to previews for The Bold and the Beautiful, Luna Nozawa will also make a daring move in the upcoming episode. "I wish Steffi Forrester Finnegan knew what it's like to be separated from a parent and child," Luna said to Remy Price. That was a clear indication that Hayes Forrester Finnegan was the target of Luna. A sample video shows Luna walking up to Hayes, who is playing in a yard. The owner's yard is unclear. But in an attempt to gain the trust of the young kid, Luna addresses him by name. The pardoned murderer then informs Hayes that he has a gift for him. This is much more unsettling because Luna is grinning sinisterly. It makes me wonder if Luna's remarks will upset Remy. Would Remy tell someone about Luna's threats in an attempt to gain atonement? Sheila Carter Sharp is the only other person Remy could turn to. Remy might, however, also follow Luna to the cliff house where Steffi and John Finnegan reside. Could Luna really get away with stealing the young boy, or will Remy prevent Hayes from being abducted? Brooke is stunned by Nick's flirtatious return, and the former flames reunite. There will be some entertaining moments as these former lovers reunite because Nick Marone's flirtatious reappearance will astound Brooke Logan. Even while Brooke is holding on to the belief that Ridge Forrester is her fate, his behavior isn't helping her realize this vision at the moment. Brooke has been experiencing some loneliness since Ridge moved in with Taylor Hayes at Eric Forrester's estate. Nick will, however, return to the scene in Monday's B&B episode to let Brooke know that she has choices. Old sentiments are about to return because Brooke and Nick were once married. Brooke will be shocked when her ex appears because Jack Wagner will play Nick Marone again in Monday's episode. Brooke will be left wondering about Nick's activities while he's been away and why he's in Los Angeles. Nick may boast about his enormous money as a shipping mogul. Nick may be working on a shipping transaction during this trip to Los Angeles, but he may swear that Brooke is the true reason for his return. Nick wants to break Brooke free from the destructive loop she's fallen into with the waffler because, as it turns out, he received updates about Ridge shattering her heart once more. Since they will both be in Italy by the end of July, Nick will court Brooke and might even invite her. Given that Nick will need to return to Naples for Marone shipping, it is easy to see him press Brooke to accompany him there. For the time being, Nick will turn on the charm and surprise Brooke with his return. Brooke will quickly recall why she fell so deeply in love with Nick during their sexy romance. When Ridge finds out that Nick has been sniffing around Brooke once more, he won't be happy. More concerningly, Luna Nozawa will likely keep planning and assembling the elements of her apparent Hayes Finnegan kidnapping scheme. When Nick Marone walked back into Brooke Logan's life on that sun-drenched Los Angeles morning, it wasn't just the ocean breeze or the seagulls that seemed to pause in time, it was Brooke herself, frozen mid-thought as she opened the door to find a familiar yet startlingly unexpected face smiling back at her with that ever-infamous, flirtatious grin that had once made her heart flutter and her pulse quicken. Jack Wagner's reprise of the bold, rugged shipping tycoon was nothing short of electrifying for longtime fans of the bold and the beautiful, and for Brooke, his return wasn't merely a surprise, it was a seismic emotional aftershock that reverberated through the foundation of everything she thought she knew about herself, her past, and especially her so-called destiny with Ridge Forrester. While Ridge had always been the supposed epicenter of her romantic life, her so-called destiny, his recent actions spoke far louder than any of his past declarations of love. Ridge, ever the conflicted soul and serial waffler between Brooke and Taylor Hayes, had once again planted himself firmly in Taylor's orbit, choosing to share space with her under Eric Forrester's roof instead of reaching out to Brooke with the kind of reassurance and commitment she desperately craved. That left Brooke not only lonely but also reflective, revisiting those quiet corners of her heart where past loves like Nick still lingered, wrapped in old laughter, stormy passion, and bittersweet memories. So when Nick appeared, unannounced and as magnetic as ever, it wasn't just the visual of him that sent Brooke reeling, it was everything that he represented, a life she once had, a love that was real, if complicated, and the very stark reminder that she still had options outside of Ridge's endless cycles of betrayal and reunion. Nick, ever the charmer, wasted no time reigniting that old spark, first with a wink and a disarmingly cocky joke about how Brooke looked like she hadn't aged a day, which drew an involuntary laugh from her lips, and then with a sly mention of how his business ventures with Marone Shipping had brought him back to L.A., though his real reason for returning, he hinted with playful eyes, was far more personal. He teased about a new maritime deal that might require him to spend more time stateside, but it quickly became clear that the real business on his agenda was Brooke Logan. As she stood there, caught off guard and yet oddly flattered, she couldn't help but be transported back to their intense and often chaotic relationship. Their past wasn't perfect, it had its scandals, heartbreaks, and betrayals, as most soap romances do, but it also had a fire that she hadn't felt in years. A passion that wasn't merely about lust, but about being seen, understood, challenged, and wanted in a way that Ridge, with all his artistic brooding and emotional inconsistency, had never quite managed to maintain. In Nick's presence, Brooke felt something awaken in her, a flicker of youthful mischief, a reminder of the strong, seductive woman she had once been, not just someone pining for a man who couldn't make up his mind. Nick began laying it on thick, dropping compliments about her enduring beauty, her strength, and even joking that if she were a stock on the New York Exchange, he'd be investing every last penny. Brooke rolled her eyes, laughing despite herself, because Nick was still Nick, incorrigible, confident, a bit reckless, and dangerously charming. Their conversation flowed like champagne, full of nostalgia and flirtation, moving from light banter to more intimate territory as Nick gently asked how she was really doing, how she was coping with Ridge's latest round of waffling. At first, Brooke deflected, as she often did, playing the part of the strong, independent woman who wasn't fazed by Ridge's absence, but as Nick pressed on, showing genuine concern, she began to crack just a little, revealing the emotional toll it had taken to watch Ridge once again retreat to Taylor, leaving her behind with empty promises and fading dreams. Nick, clearly moved, leaned in and reminded Brooke that she didn't need to wait around for a man who couldn't see her worth, that she deserved more, not just in love, but in life. And then, in classic Nick Marone style, he smoothly invited her to join him on a trip to Italy, suggesting a getaway to Naples, where he'd be wrapping up a business deal and could use some company. The suggestion was layered with intention. Not only was he offering her an escape from the heartbreak of Los Angeles, but he was also presenting her with a chance to rediscover herself, and perhaps, to rediscover what they once had. Brooke hesitated, of course, her mind spinning with the complications such a trip would entail, but the gleam in Nick's eyes and the echo of old laughter in her heart made it increasingly difficult to say no. Meanwhile, as word of Nick's return began to circulate, it wasn't long before Ridge caught wind of his ex-wife's former flame being back in town, and worse, being back in her life. Ridge, ever the territorial romantic, didn't take kindly to the idea of another man charming Brooke, even if he was simultaneously living with Taylor. His signature scowl darkened as he imagined Nick and Brooke together again, and though he wouldn't admit it aloud, the thought of Nick rekindling what he once had with Brooke stirred something primal in Ridge, a mix of jealousy, regret, and the dawning realization that maybe he'd pushed Brooke too far this time. But Ridge wasn't the only one sensing a shift in the romantic landscape of Los Angeles. Taylor, perceptive and always a step ahead when it came to Ridge's wavering loyalties, noticed his distracted behavior and silently braced herself for yet another round of the never-ending Brooke versus Taylor saga. Yet this time, with Nick back in play, the dynamic had shifted. Brooke wasn't simply waiting around anymore, she had someone who actually showed up for her, someone who wasn't afraid to fight for her happiness, someone who might just steal her heart all over again. As Brooke mulled over Nick's proposal and the implications of revisiting that chapter of her life, she began to see how much had changed, and how much hadn't. The city was the same, the faces familiar, but the woman she was now was wiser, perhaps a little jaded, but still yearning for connection, for passion, for the kind of love that didn't leave her feeling like an afterthought. Nick offered her that possibility, not a promise, but a potential. He didn't pretend to be perfect, and that honesty made him all the more appealing. Brooke found herself laughing more in that single afternoon with Nick than she had in months, and while she tried to dismiss it as a fleeting reunion, the truth was harder to ignore. Being with Nick felt easy in a way that being with Ridge never had. Meanwhile, Nick, fully aware of what was at stake, didn't shy away from reminding Brooke of their shared history, from their explosive chemistry to the way they once built dreams together. He wasn't just rekindling old flames, he was daring her to imagine a future beyond Ridge's shadow. In the backdrop of this reawakening romance, however, a darker subplot continued to stir as Luna Nozawa delved deeper into her plan to kidnap Hayes Finnegan, setting the stage for a high-stakes twist that would soon grip the Forrester family in a whirlwind of chaos. While Brooke was rediscovering the joy of being pursued, the darker corners of Los Angeles were filled with secrets, schemes, and betrayals that threatened to derail everything. Luna, operating in the shadows with chilling precision, was slowly constructing a plot that would shake the very core of the Finnegan and Forrester families. Her motivations, complex and unclear, added a layer of suspense to an already emotionally turbulent time. Brooke's blissful moments with Nick might soon be overshadowed by the chaos Luna was about to unleash, and as always in the world of the bold and the beautiful, love and danger walked hand in hand. Still, in the golden light of the California afternoon, none of that mattered to Brooke, not yet. All she could focus on was the man in front of her, the invitation to escape, and the sudden, almost intoxicating realization that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to wait around for Ridge to figure things out. Maybe she didn't have to be part of the same tired triangle. Maybe love could be new again. As Nick leaned in, whispering something about Limoncello and sunsets over the Mediterranean, Brooke smiled, not because she was in love again, not yet, but because she could be. And in a world filled with broken promises and recycled heartbreak, that possibility felt like the most romantic thing of all.